Hey everybody, welcome to the Craig Foley Show on Deadline Detroit. My first ever show here on Deadline Detroit. Glad to have you with me today. And it is a Friday, which means we are going to continue a tradition. That would be the Friday Follies. This is where we actually get to have fun with the news of the week and the news makers of the week. And every single week these days seems to bring us new and more glorious comedy topics. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I'm glad to be with you on this Friday. And I have two people with me today that I'm very excited to bring on. Alan Lengel is with us today from Deadline Detroit, and of course Nancy Derringer from Deadline Detroit. I am also with Deadline Detroit, so this is a clean sweep.
Absolutely.
And let's what we do on this show is we basically make fun of the news of the week. So let's start with this one.
Okay.
The story that was in Crane's Detroit Business and of course on Deadline Detroit yesterday is that you guys were stupid enough to bring me on board. And I have to ask you, what the hell were you thinking?
I defer to the editor.
That's right.
I'm excited about this, and we've gotten some good feedback. Ready? I see Rochelle Riley at the
Absolutely.
Detroit Free Press gave a thumbs up. I listened to you on WDT, and I was occasionally a guest, and I was always impressed by your professionalism. And I'm excited to.
Well, you will be less impressed by the time the Friday Follies is over, but that's okay. 4 days a week. 4 days a week. I'm going to be serious, but Fridays we get to let it loose a little bit. Right. I think it's kind of a fun thing. And Nancy, you've done this how many times now?
Quite a few. But on a more serious note, the days when you could be a journalist and only do one thing have been over for several years now, and they're going to continue to be over. And so, I think however people find us, whether they come to the webpage, whether they find us via their social media, whether they come via this podcast, welcome, come on in. Deadline Detroit is an ongoing, flexible, 21st century news source.
Well, there
right?
you go.
Exactly.
I mean, considering we're 20 years into the 21st century almost at this point. I mean, it's 2019.
I know, but there are an awful lot of media outlets who are still acting like it's the 19th century. So I think we're evolving. So, and this is part of our evolution.
We're looking at the 22nd century already.
Because we're all going to be there.
Yeah,
we're going to cure all these diseases. We're all going to be like 200 years old.
I'll be like
and
Dick Cheney with like this empty cavity in my heart, just like pumping away. But anyway.
Dick Cheney. I mean, okay. Do you remember the days when he was like the most evil person in Washington?
Sure.
Do we long for those days?
He looks
at this
like
point
Winston
in time?
Churchill at this point. I mean, just about everybody does.
Well, I haven't seen the movie yet.
I haven't either.
I'm kind of thinking I might want to go see the Cheney movie because,
I think it'll be a fun.
Wildly
polarizing.
Polarizing. Thank you. Wildly polarizing reviews on this one. So I'm reading I'm like, it's 1 or 2 or 4 or 5.
Well,
little in the middle. Stars.
I mean, he's a fascinating character in our history, because I think the view of many people was that I felt like him and Rumsfeld and to some extent Colin Powell were looking for a younger vessel to carry on their policies. So they found George W. Bush, and I think George W. Bush deferred to Cheney as like, I'm the guy who knows it all. I've been around. We're going to do it this way, and he thought that was the best policy. After a while, he realized that Cheney and Rumsfeld were really not taking him on the best course.
From their undisclosed
took a while.
location.
Think about it, though. We're still living with this today. I mean, Donald Trump, of course, made waves about a week ago when he said that he's going to pull troops out of Syria and Afghanistan.
Maybe Afghanistan, yeah.
Maybe,
right.
We don't know.
Nobody does.
Think about it. 20 years later, we're still dealing with this stuff. I mean, and for as much as Donald Trump says things, and we're going to get into that in just a little bit, a guy had a question for me. He was a Trump supporter on Twitter the other day. Said, well, do you have a reason to stay in Afghanistan? I was like, I can't really think of any at this point. It doesn't seem to be doing us any good. Right. Clearly, that place isn't stable anytime soon.
Well, it's interesting now. Once Russia was in there fighting the Taliban, they lost. We went in fighting the Taliban, and now Russia is supporting the Taliban fighting against us. Russia is using a lot of surrogates. Using surrogates in
proxy wars, Yemen.
Yeah,
right.
in Lebanon and in all these countries, and yet we embrace Putin as our pal while they're killing our soldiers.
Well, speaking of Putin, though, I mean, Donald Trump was basically given the Putin line about this sort of revisionist history that Russia now has about their invasion of Afghanistan. And Donald Trump came out the other day and said that it was because terrorists from Afghanistan were attacking people in Russia, which basically goes against what every single administration and historian has said about the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan.
But that was the justification they gave to invade Afghanistan.
It was wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I mean, they have the internal communications.
Yeah.
They have been
I mean,
declassified.
like U.S.
showing why they
invading
did this.
Iraq because they had nuclear weapons.
That's right.
I'll tell you,
Weapons of
it's
mass destruction.
interesting. When I was living in D.C., one of my neighbors, Aviva Kempner, former Detroiter, who Life and Times of Hank Greenberg film, she would have people over all the time from all the different embassies and stuff. So one night she had the Israeli embassy over, and this was 2003, before we invaded Iraq. And I said to one of the guys from the embassy, actually his wife, he was a lawyer, his wife worked in the embassy, and I said, well, what do you think about Iraq, about our, invading Iraq? He said, I'm not worried about Iraq. He says, I don't think they have nuclear capability. He says, secular nation. He goes, I'm worried about Iran, religious zealots, nuclear capability, and yet with that, I mean, I could find that out at a party.
Right.
How could the U.S. have not had the intelligence?
It's good to know that the president, he won't read briefing books prepared by his own staff, but he seems to be absolutely up to date on the one that the Russians are putting out. So that's good to know.
He
is capable of learning.
Are we sure? Because you may not think so.
That's...
After I go through some of the things, he had a cabinet meeting the other day that was 95 minutes. 95 minutes of
with
him
the
talking.
Game of Thrones poster on the table? I thought that was Photoshopped. That was real.
Well, yeah, sanctions are coming. Like winter is coming, right?
My
just
God.
sort of. Here's something that he forgets about Game of Thrones. What happened in the last season of Game of Thrones? I'm sorry, spoiler alert. If you haven't watched the last season, it's tough.
Yeah.
The wall doesn't work.
No, the wall
giant
does
wall
not
that they
work.
built to keep out the people, the
And
White
that
Walkers.
wall had magic in it.
It did.
It did.
And just took one bad dragon to take that thing down.
Absolutely.
So, it's just a matter of time. So the wall is not necessarily going to solve our problems.
No.
I mean, it may have worked if we have the invading Mongol hordes, back in like the
Yeah,
first century.
a horse can't get through that, but a dragon absolutely can.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, we've got a guy who's tapped into his inner 10-year-old, and he is ruling from that perspective.
So
I think it's his inner
Okay,
10-year-old.
I'm a little biased.
His inner 10-year-old is also an outer 10-year-old. But anyway,
Yes.
go ahead.
Well, look, we've been looking at the things that he says about our allies and the way that he basically kowtows to our friends in Russia. Here's what he said just the other day in this 95-minute stream of consciousness weirdness that I watched. And I watched the whole thing. And by the time I was done, my brain hurt because I couldn't follow what the heck he was talking about for the most time.
Okay,
But
what
he
did he
said,
say?
when they say I'm not popular in Europe, I shouldn't be popular in Europe. But then he said, I could be the most popular person in Europe. I could be. I could run for any office if I wanted to, but I don't want to.
Thank God he doesn't want to.
Because I guarantee you the French would be lining up to pull the lever for Donald Trump right now.
I can't
mean,
believe
come
this
on.
guy is on his third wife. Because what woman wouldn't want to hear that over the breakfast table every morning?
But that was the thing. It's like, I don't want to be popular in Europe. Who says that? What president says that? I mean, you want
This one. I mean, there's no good answer to that question. You're just ranting. But this one says that. Yeah. Our natural allies, our closest allies, the people with whom we have helped keep the world more or less safe for the last, the better part of a century, we're just, those people, who cares?
Putin, on the other hand,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Kim
that
Jong,
guy.
oh
love
my
that
God,
guy.
I love those guys. Those guys are so much more fun than the
They get to
Europeans.
do whatever they want.
Well, and I think he's jealous.
Oh, I think so too.
They've got some interesting toys, and they can,
Sure.
flaunt them. Toys such as, autocratic rule.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
ability to kill people that say bad things about you.
Yeah. The photographer that follows you around taking your picture on a horse.
I guarantee you, Donald Trump would probably like to assassinate somebody with a flamethrower, or at least put somebody to death with a flamethrower, the way that Kim Jong Un did.
Yeah.
Right.
Among other things, that's a really gruesome way to go. And I think it was his uncle.
Yeah,
So-
it was his uncle. I remember that.
So,
All right.
we're on that. But some of the other things that he said here, he got into the whole Mitt Romney thing. Now, Mitt Romney makes a splash coming into the Senate,
Yeah.
putting an op-ed in the Washington Post saying that the man is not presidential.
What do you?
Awkward.
You know what is so kind of mind-boggling about Mitt Romney is that in 2016 he comes out and says, how terrible a candidate Trump is, how that he's a liar, that he's a fraud, and then you see him suddenly having dinner trying to get
Trump
the
Tower.
State Department
Sure.
job. And so then you're like, oh my God, have you no shame? And then
And the
he
answer
comes
is
back now, and then he's running for Senate, and Trump says, oh, you know, and they play like they're pals again, and now he comes out again like this. It's like watching, from what's his name from North Carolina or South Carolina,
Lindsey Graham.
Lindsey Graham. It's like, who is Lindsey Graham today? Lindsey Graham hates Donald Trump. Wait a minute, Lindsey Graham's on the golf course. Wait a minute, Lindsey Graham says, you know, you fire the Attorney General and this is the end of your presidency. Lindsey Graham says, hey, it's your choice. Pick whoever you want. It's like, it's insane.
Is Mitt setting up for 2020? I mean, you
Oh,
know,
I
there's
think
some speculation.
I think absolutely.
But
yes.
I love the
I
fact
think
that
it's
his
a smart
own,
move for him to do that.
that his
to
own
stand
niece
Yeah.
changed her name from Romney McDaniel to Ronnie McDaniel. Ronna McDaniel.
She dropped the
at
maiden name. Yeah.
At the maiden name at the request of Donald
Shameless.
Trump because
Yes.
he doesn't like Mitt Romney.
Right.
And then she came out and basically scolded her uncle, which means that basically the family gathering next time is not going to be that much fun.
It's going to be so good. It's going to be so good.
I
I really wish we could all just see that.
I hope he has a sense of humor and he just laughs when he reads his niece do that.
I don't know.
I'm not sure, but I mean,
Donald Trump though really has a unique talent in that he taints almost everything that he comes near in so many ways. And I mean, you know, think of all these staff members who are going to have to. I mean, what are they going to do when they go out? What's Sarah Sanders going to do when she goes out?
Somebody will embrace her.
Well,
some
I know. And I mean, you know, it's like,
Fox News, she'll have her own show.
It's possible.
some
It's-
conservative
it
group,
depends.
think tank will be like, come on.
Yeah, the sinecure
Yeah.
is open, but at the
Yeah.
same time, I mean, you can't feel good when you look in the mirror at the end of the day after you've done this. But
She's apparently doing it without, you know, I mean, even Sean
Yeah.
Spicer couldn't last that, you know.
I know.
As long
But what is
it's
Sean
amazing.
Spicer
I
doing now?
thought Sean Spicer was going to last longer than Sarah Sanders, but
yeah, no,
probably not.
that didn't
No,
work.
she's got the right medal for this
Yeah.
thing. She's unafraid to say anything. She doesn't care. She'll just
Right.
repeat whatever is there.
Uh-huh.
Try to say, well, what he was trying to say is this, and that's
Yeah.
the whole thing. I'm like,
You think maybe before a press conference she takes 3 or 4 Valium, so then she's just like, bring it on. I
It certainly
don't
doesn't
care.
seem like she's taking Valium. She gets
I
pretty
don't think
feisty
so.
up there.
I'm
So
gonna
you
say,
know.
I'm betting on a double espresso, maybe a triple.
But
So.
But the funny thing is, though, is this Romney thing clearly has rubbed Trump the wrong way.
Oh, yeah.
In that he's like, look, I have great popularity in Utah. They love me there. And he called him this incoming freshman senator, which basically, you know, belies his past experience and the fact that he was
Yeah.
the candidate for president
Yeah.
against Barack Obama. And you know, and running a decent campaign till the remarks about, you know, the great unwashed that he put out there, which really sort of tanked things for him.
I think it's got to scare him to see guys like Jeff Flake who have left the Senate and thinking, thank God, good riddance. And here it is. He's like, oh no, here comes a new wave.
Well, it's the Jeff Flake seat for advanced hand wringing and pearl clutching. I think. I don't think any. You know, he may well be setting up to run in 2020, and I think he probably is. But I can't see him going very far. If the candidate has to somehow meld Trump's base with, you know, with the far greater number of Republicans who are made very uncomfortable by him, I don't see Romney pulling that magic off. Who knows?
I wouldn't be shocked.
Plus, he's already lost once.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
come on.
I wouldn't be shocked 3 months from now to see them on the golf course together, Trump and,
Yeah,
and
right.
Romney.
Oh, remember that picture they took?
What a fun
During the
foursome that would be.
transition.
No, I
Yeah.
don't think so. It's like talks about 2 guys I would not want to play golf with. You know, Mitt Romney I interviewed a long time ago when he was running for president last time. He wrote the book about the healthcare changes in his time as governor of Massachusetts, and I interviewed him for that book. And you know, we were talking about Romney Care for America, which became essentially Obamacare, very close to it. And I couldn't believe how quickly he disavowed his own successful plan in Massachusetts. That told me a lot about Mitt Romney.
I know.
And where he stands on things. And we had a lengthy argument to the point where the publicist's like, this interview's over. Click. They hung up on me. I got my 10 minutes in. I was like,
That's always
okay.
a good feeling
Well,
when they walk out.
It was kind of funny. All right, so some of the Trump quotes from this thing that I want to get to. This is my favorite part. He was talking about, meeting with generals in advance of making his decision to
the
leave.
good-looking ones. How good-looking
This
they
is
were.
great.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Here's the quote. I had a meeting at the Pentagon with lots of generals. they were like from a movie, better looking than Tom Cruise and stronger. And I had more generals than I've ever seen. What the heck does that mean? Because last I checked, the best generals we've ever had, Patton, Eisenhower, Omar Bradley, not exactly lookers.
Not as good looking as Tom Cruise.
As Tom Cruise. Maybe
Dwight
I'm
Eisenhower,
maybe
Tom
I'm wrong.
Cruise. I don't know.
Somehow I'm not seeing the observation of their looks as the problem here. I mean, this is like this. If you changed a couple words in this and put them in the mouth of a 12-year-old actor playing with Green Army men, you know, that's what he just did.
I think what I see is that he's lost his two generals that were helping run, you know, the State Department,
the country,
or the Secretary of Defense, and his Chief of Staff. Two people that he bragged about. I've got these generals. Well, he's lost his generals. He's like, hey, you know what? I've got a lot
more. Some more generals.
I've got more generals from where they came from.
And then he went on to say, I think I could have been a good general. Maybe. I don't know.
Could have had bone spurs. Yeah.
But I'm trying to figure out, better looking than Tom Cruise and stronger. So is this is what he notices when he goes into this meeting at CENTCOM or something like that?
It's a little homoerotic, isn't it?
It certainly is.
Yeah, it is. It's very weird.
You know,
but you know, so there you go.
Like a new incarnation of the Village People. I can see this here. The generals.
Yeah.
It's a new act. It's a new
1
act.
star, 2 star, 3 star, and the big kahuna, the 4 star.
Yeah, and so I have the best tax cut of all time. That's the one that he said
that was a good one,
which was good.
Only blew up the deficit about, you know.
And then my favorite was still he was talking about, you know, woe is me, that he was all alone by himself in the White House when everybody else was out doing the holiday because of the government shutdown.
The lonely
that we are still going on. And he said, it's a big, big house, except for all the guys out on the lawn with machine guns. Nicest machine guns I've ever seen.
You know what? It's funny. The Trumps have always, Trump and Melania, have treated the White House like they're slumming. It's like, we've got this amazing place in Florida. We've got Key Largo. We've got Mar-a-Lago. We've got
Trump Tower.
Yeah, we've got all these other amazing places. And look at the dump we're ending up in the White House. We have to spend the whole weekend in the White House. This is, you know, the guy leaves immediately every weekend. He's gone.
Can't you go to Camp David? I mean, I think Camp David's got some rustic charm to it.
Camp Tamarack, even.
Yeah. I have been to Camp Tamarack. All right, this was one where I was actually sort of going, maybe he's got a point here. He said, you know, he's talking about the Democrats and Nancy Pelosi saying that the wall is immoral. They're not going to give money for the wall because they think it's not a good look for America. And I tend to come down on that side of the fence. Get it? But he said, look, when they say the wall's immoral, well, then you've got to do something about the Vatican because the Vatican has the biggest wall of them all. And I was like,
well, the Vatican was also built in, you know, when was the Vatican built?
Well, and if you look at those guards at the Vatican, I mean, I can imagine the Secret Service wearing that stuff, you know, the Swiss guard.
The Swiss guard,
with the little swords and the pantaloons. That'd be kind of cool.
And nobody's coming after the Vatican either, so, you know.
And then you also have him saying, look at all the countries that have walls, and they work 100%.
Really? Like China? Didn't work for China. Hadrian, did it work for Hadrian? I don't know.
I'm taking a look at this.
Of some other walls.
Which countries have walls?
Oh, Israel's got a wall.
See, Netanyahu played up to him right when he got elected, and he said, hey, we've got a wall, it works, smart idea. Donald Trump sucking up to Trump, knowing that Trump is easily...
I'm not sure.
Did you see World War Z? Because the zombies came over that wall like nobody's business.
See,
well, you know, the other thing about drugs is that...
this guy so steeped in pop culture would recognize these things.
Exactly.
He talks about, you know, about the drugs being smuggled in, and when I think it's about 90% of the illegal drugs come through legal entry points in the U.S.
Sure.
I mean,
via water, too.
Yeah. And so, and besides, you know, drones and whatever, and people are carrying them on their body. There's trucks. If you ever see the number of trucks coming through the Mexican border, like through Tijuana and Nogales, I mean, there's just truck after truck after truck. They can't check every truck.
They bust these garbage trucks coming in from Canada all the time. They found all kinds of stuff in those, for those, you know, the radioactive waste that we get to import from Canada these days.
Right.
Thank you, Governor Snyder, for that one on the way out the door, allowing for more radioactive waste from Canada. Sweet. Yeah. We just need that. All right, so, and this, we'll stop with Trump after this one, because I think we've got to do this, but Jeff Flake, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
So Jeff Flake, I guess he's now selling real estate or whatever he's doing.
I'm so conflicted.
That was a great slam, though. I have to sit there. I don't know, I mean, You know, but what's wrong with selling real estate? Because that
There's
is
nothing wrong
effectively
with
what
selling
Donald
real
Trump
estate.
did.
Yeah.
His entire career.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, is he actually meeting at your house and putting out the cheese plate for the open house? I don't know. Or is he a real estate developer? Different thing.
All right. I should remind folks we're in the midst of the Friday Follies. Of course, Alan Lengel and Nancy Derringer from Deadline Detroit are my guests. We are at the Buell Bar in downtown Detroit. Deadline Detroit, the new home for this program. So let's switch topics. Rashida Tlaib did not wait very long to create some fodder for the Fox News crowd. They were all over this morning on Fox and Friends, which, by the way, I will remind everybody, is it's the best unintentional comedy program on television. Fox and Friends. It is just
Jon Stewart just
wonderful.
made vicious fun of them for years.
And you have to, because, Gretchen Carlson was on that show for a long time. Mm-hmm. This is a woman who was a Rhodes Scholar, went to Stanford.
Was she a Rhodes Scholar? I know she was Miss America.
Well, she was a Rhodes Scholar, from what I understand. She's very, very smart. She graduated from Stanford, but she played it on that show for effect. And there was some word they used. I couldn't remember what it was. She's like, now, I didn't know what that word meant, so I went to the Google. I'm like, oh my God, did my grandmother just take over the show? I was like, I mean, this show's...
I don't have cable anymore,
but
so
they
I can't watch.
love this, right? Because they're like, what are these radical
All right, well,
Democrats?
tell them what she did, though.
Well, she, of course,
For
went
those
out
people
there.
who don't live on Twitter or Fox News.
They were talking about whether or not they intend to impeach President Trump or bring impeachment proceedings against him.
She was at a rally.
Said she was at a rally, and she said yes. She's talking about her kid, and she said yes. We're going to impeach the MFer.
Yeah.
So
she didn't say MFer.
She actually said the whole word in her second day in
whole
Congress.
word.
And
Wow.
it was in kind of like a rally. It was a party, but it was also kind of a rally type atmosphere. So where you're encouraged to speak rationally.
But, the Democrats have been very coy about whether or not they want to go down this road. They say they're going to do some investigations and look into some things, but...
Well, I think Nancy Pelosi has said that they're open to certainly looking into that possibility.
Well, yes, but they have not been as vociferous about it as...
Well, they haven't. She didn't say MF.
It is absolutely
we're going to impeach the MFer. I mean, that's what she said. And so, of course, this is the red meat now that they can throw out, say, look, it's all about getting rid of Trump. The Democrats, these radical leftist Democrats like Muslim Rashida Tlaib, and they were saying that this morning.
Right.
Oh, she is a Muslim, by the way.
Yeah.
I heard that. And and now Ocasio-Cortez. So basically, they are the face of the Democrats that Fox is going to try to promote for the next few years.
They're going to say people who are not really Americans are taking over our country.
A friend of mine described Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez beautifully when he said she's primarily deployed as a rubber spider to frighten conservatives. Oh my God, she's dancing now! Oh my God!
Well, have you seen the stuff that they're doing to her right now?
It's unbelievable.
Because in high school her nickname was Sandy. Well, her name's Alexandria. Sandy's, I've seen that come out of that. It doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah,
but so she was called Sandy, and she may have gone to a better school, like a Tony school. She's not like the Jenny on the block.
But she's working as a bartender. So I mean, she's one congresswoman. She's a freshman, but she's very nice looking, and she's adorable. Did you see that dancing video?
I did. Well, they thought this was going to show
hell.
her as being like some sort of bubblehead or something like that.
A 19-year-old danced. Oh my God.
Yeah, imagine that. Yeah. It never happens. It never happens. But now they're like Sandy. These are like the tweets that are out there. Mm-hmm. Sandy, as she was known in her privileged school in Yorktown, not in the Bronx.
Oh my God.
Is it Sandy or Alexandria Ocasio?
Yeah.
I mean, so this is like becoming a scandal now, and people are picking up on this.
It's
so I'm
not
just waiting for
becoming a
QAnon.
scandal. Some people would like it to become a scandal.
The QAnon world is going to definitely go after this.
But getting back to Rashida,
it only lasts so long. I think something like that.
Sarah Palin picked it up though. She's tweeting about it.
Oh boy, Sarah Palin. She really swings.
The brain trust of the party.
Can I just say one more thing about Rashida?
You can say whatever you want.
This is her brand. The last time I think I saw Rashida Tlaib in the flesh,
getting arrested somewhere,
she was getting bum rushed out of the Trump rally at the Economic Club. She was one of the 20-some people, almost all of them women, who risked the bum rush in order to stand up during that speech that he gave and yell at him. Right?
Yeah.
So this is her brand, and she has And I was also looking at some of the Twitter reactions to that, mostly from people who don't live anywhere near Michigan. And they were saying things like, well, we need to vote her out. And it's like, hello, she is in probably the safest Democratic district in the entire state, in part thanks to gerrymandering, partisan gerrymandering that was carried out by guess which party the last time. It's like she's got cement overshoes in that seat. I mean, she's not, unless she really screws up or something terrible happens, I don't see her leaving anytime soon.
No, and again, her audience, her constituency probably absolutely loved hearing that yesterday.
Yes, exactly.
And I mean, because
Democrats
MFR is not exactly something that you don't often hear in the 13th congressional district.
I think our friend Von Derderian said that very thing. He said both Democrats and Republicans are going on about this clip this morning for entirely different reasons, and they both love it in their own way. You know, the Republicans love it because they think this is a terrible thing that's going to hurt her, and Republicans love it because they think it's a great thing. I mean, I'm sorry, Democrats do. So, you know, let it go.
Well, all right, we've only got about 5 minutes left here, and because we're cutting this down to a half an hour. It goes fast this way.
Countdown clock.
But I did want to get into this. This was a really interesting story out of Arkansas. There was a guy who ran for city council in Arkansas. He went to go vote for early voting, but he got to the city hall after it was closed, so he was there. So then he was planning to vote, but he was on a flight, and his flight was delayed, so he didn't make it to the polls. The vote ended up being a tie, 223 votes apiece. The guy didn't get a chance to vote for himself, which would have put him over the top. So how did they decide this tie? They did a dice roll game. And
Really?
he lost yesterday, so the guy couldn't get to the polls to vote for himself and loses an election by one.
Is he a Democrat or Republican, or is this nonpartisan?
It's nonpartisan. It's a city.
Okay,
It's a city council thing in
Okay.
Hoxie, Arkansas.
Hoxie.
So the guy
Arkansas.
said, "Well, the main thing is for people to get out and vote." He's a 65-year-old guy. He's a bank bookkeeper. And he tried to vote early, but he just wasn't able to do it. This guy.
Well, this is an argument for
Or
making it.
Cliff Farmer. Cliff Farmer is a 33-year-old guy who didn't make it to the polls to vote for himself. Excuse me, I have the names backwards.
This is an argument for making it easier for people to vote ahead of Election Day. You know?
I would agree. And he did try. He tried twice.
I mean, could you? I guess you have to be there by poll closing time, or there's no provisional ballot for that. But I mean, it's.
I love the fact that they just a high number on the dice decided this election.
Yeah, that was a bit much. Well, don't they do? Don't they draw straws or? I mean, there have been
coin
ties
flips.
before,
There have been coin flips and things like that. But still, I mean,
it's like fate is a cruel mistress.
How about like a wrestling match or something?
Yeah, like that.
Where you actually feel
or
like you have
since
some
we're talking about Game of Thrones, you know, trial by combat. You know, a sword fight.
Russian roulette. Russian roulette.
Russian roulette. That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So I do want to end up with this because I do like to do one stupid story of the week that you've seen. And I didn't find anything in Florida, Nancy.
Oh.
So things have been quiet in Florida. Normally,
man.
every week when we do this, we find some really
Florida man
really
is still sleeping
dim
off New
person.
Year's.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I think
Florida
so.
man. Florida man is basically it.
Exactly.
But I found out about this. This is apparently a new problem that people have, an affliction that they're getting called selfie wrist.
Really?
So like tennis elbow. But apparently, the way you have to hold your camera to take a selfie is causing some sorts of problems. There you go.
I know what you're talking about here.
Selfie wrist. There's a doctor who's warning this, saying this is a hazard, and this is something he's seeing.
How many
more and more
selfies do
often.
you have to take to get selfie wrist?
I don't know, but it's Dr. Levi Harrison. He lives in San Francisco. He's warning people about selfie wrist.
I'm telling Levi Harrison to like put a sock in it.
I'm not buying that.
First of all, I'm not buying it.
I'm not buying that.
Seems
we
like an
live in
embarrassing way to
selfie
get
nation.
injured. Yeah.
I know.
It's selfie wrist, man. Sorry, I can't play tennis today.
I know. You know, I'm an old bag, and Alan's a little bit older, and you're younger, but we're all kind of past the mid-century point, right?
I am past the mid-century point.
I think
yes.
I got my picture taken I think my parents went through like one roll of film a year in their camera, you know, and we had those brownies where you had to crank it, you know, and then the Instamatic came along.
And they were
that
pointing
was a
at
big
themselves
deal.
all the
The
time.
Instamatic.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Flash
It's like-
bulbs. Remember those little cubes you had to put
Yeah,
on the top?
exactly.
Those are fun.
Flash cubes and those other, and it was like, and Polaroids and all that stuff. But the point is, I maybe got my picture taken 5 to 10 times in a year,
Yeah.
right? Today's kid gets their picture taken 5 to 10 times before lunch, and so you know, it's just, and I see it on my Facebook. I see these kids who just know to look. You know, look, find your angle. Look at the light. Smile.
Is there an angle? I don't know. It's a new camera we're using today, so I could look absolutely horrible, and we'll figure that out. Which is
I was
why
looking at my light. So
Yeah,
there you go.
Is there a way to measure a narcissist by the number of selfies they have on their Facebook page?
Yeah. I remember my daughter came
That's a good
downstairs once when she was about 14, and she named one of her friends and says, "There are 475 photos in her, selfies folder on Facebook.
Wow.
Because she does a new one every single day. So, that was back when Facebook was a thing. Now it's not a thing anymore. So.
All right, well, we got to wrap this
Okay.
up. I want to give everybody an opportunity real fast. On a somewhat serious note, we have a new administration here in Michigan.
Yep.
Of course, you have the new governor, Gretchen Whitmer, pledging that she's going to cooperate. She's going to have to because Republicans
Divided
control.
government.
What are we going to see? Are we going to see any real cooperation? Will we see movement on the damn roads, and will we get auto insurance taken care of, and will anything else actually get done, or are we going to see very similar to what we see in Washington?
I think we're going to see something with the roads. I think the idea that Snyder, I think, was afraid about raising taxes. As a Republican talking about taxes, I think Whitmer is committed to fixing the roads. I think we'll see something.
I think roads. Yeah, I think road repair that's a bipartisan issue. I mean, everybody is upset about the roads. And
It doesn't mean they all want to pay for it, though. We've been having this discussion since
I know,
1994.
But who? I mean, come on. I mean, we all know that it costs money to do this, and there aren't just billions of dollars laying around in piles.
Bill Schuette seemed to think there was.
And
maybe that's why he lost.
It shouldn't be an issue that you put before the voters.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that was kicking the can to have the voters
Yes.
decide whether we should fix the roads.
That's why we elect legislators to do this. I think there's probably going to be movement on road funding. What were the other things you
Auto
mentioned?
insurance.
I think auto insurance reform
That's a tougher
will
one.
at least make an appearance. Whether it passes, I don't know. And
Detroit,
beyond that, I don't feel...
The auto insurance in Detroit is so outrageous.
it's
I mean,
unbelievable.
I've moved to a different part of Detroit where my insurance has gone down quite a bit, but at one point I was paying, with a good record, I mean, I had one accident, I was paying $4,800
That's insane.
a year.
Yeah.
I mean, now it's
For
been
a
cut
Ford.
substantially. Yeah.
To insure a Ford.
Yeah,
Right.
Ford Escape. It's been cut substantially. Now that I live in Midtown, I moved from downtown to Midtown, and I changed insurance carriers. But
Well, if I move down here, I'm just getting rid of my car.
yeah,
you know.
it's untenable for the majority of people. It's like and part of the issue I called the State Farm, who was charging me $4,800. I said, "What's the issue here?" And I said, "Is it stolen cars? Is it people uninsured?" She says, "Both." And I said, "Well, you know what? If I lived in Southfield and I had to pay $4,800, I'd be running into a lot more people who are uninsured, who were not carrying insurance." And that's the sort of catch-22 here in Detroit, is that a lot more people would have insurance if it wasn't so outrageous.
Well,
Yeah.
that's exactly it. You're forcing people to ride dirty, and
Yeah.
we got to do something about
Well,
that.
and then they can't register to vote in the neighborhoods where they. Well, this is if people
Well,
either
I
ride
think
dirty
Detroit's
or they.
population would be a lot different if people actually had
Yeah.
affordable insurance here, because there's a lot of people who would actually register to vote here.
Well, I know, and
we'd know
but,
their actual
all
address.
these younger people that are moving into the city, they all keep their cars registered at their
Thanks,
parents'
Mom.
house.
There you go.
Thanks, Mom and Dad, and all that. But I mean, I remember doing a story about this a few years back, and I interviewed this guy who said, "I live at the Park Shelton, somewhere the Park Shelton, and he works at some place downtown where he gets parking, in a garage." And he said, "I drive my car 1 mile a day from one secured parking garage to another secured parking garage, and I am paying just out." He finally called his agent, and he said, "This has to change, or I'm leaving."
Time to get a bicycle.
And they ended up doing a little some fuzzy around the edges kind of accommodation.
We'll see if the
Thanks,
discussion
Mom.
actually is about the right things on this issue, and that's what I'm going to be watching. Are they
Yeah.
actually going to have real discussions about personal injury protection and what the rates are? I mean, there are some things that they could do, and we'll know real fast how serious they are based on what the rhetoric is around this issue. Because anyway,
Yeah.
we'll wrap that up there. We'll
Let's
actually
wrap.
do some real analysis on another day. But Nancy, thank you very much for being back
It's
once again.
great to
Alan,
have you on the team.
I'm excited to be
Thanks.
here.
Well,
really
we're
looking
excited-
forward
we're excited
to it,
to have you.
and
This is
off to a great
great.
start already. And Monday, look for the audio podcast starting on Monday. That's going to run Monday through Thursday. We'll keep doing the Friday Follies on Friday, and we'll keep doing video for that. So that's a little different. But thanks for being here. Appreciate it very much, and we'll talk soon. This has been the Friday Follies on the Craig Folly Show at Deadline Detroit. Thanks for being with me. We'll talk soon.